Hello, welcome to another episode of the Open Source Education Podcast. I'm your host, Precious, and today we'll be talking about operating systems and open source. Who runs the software? In general, operating systems are like the foundation of every single thing that other services or software that your device is going to run and is built on. Right? We have like macOS, Windows, Linux. We have both the open source and then the proprietary operating systems. So like open source operating systems are those that their source code is made available to the public, right? If you want to know the difference between anything like open source, you just know that the difference between A in proprietary software and A in open source software is that this one is available to the public. It allows anybody to inspect, modify, and distribute the code. They are developed collaboratively by a community of developers. And then operating systems and open source are important because it helps with transparency and security. Everybody can see the source code. Vulnerabilities can easily be seen and fixed. And like it's a whole joint effort as opposed to just proprietary software, and it has to be the devs that are responsible for building it that will also check for bugs and stuff. So it also like makes it is slower for them to figure out why there's an issue with something. Yeah, but when there are a lot of people working on something, it's easier for different experience levels to be able to pick up why an issue is coming up and then submit a patch to fix it. And also help with community collaboration. You know the facets of open source by now. Customization and flexibility helps people to tailor open source OSSs to meet their specific needs, adding or removing features as needed. It's also very cost effective and has educational value because it gives you a great learning platform for students there who are still building, and then you can like experiment and know what the more popular open source software that is probably proprietary is made out of, right? And that's like a really good experience. A very typical example of where using an open source operating system is very helpful is this recent issue with CrowdStrike where a lot of services were stopped because the OS had an issue, right? For people who were using open source operating systems, did not have to see like an interruption in their processes. So that's one of the very, very great things of having to use open source software. It's easy for them to find out vulnerabilities and just quickly work with it. And then like I have like a previous episode where I spoke about how this whole issue of transparency and security, it was due to the transparency of the open source software that somebody else was able to figure out a backdoor in the tool and were able to fix it, and then there was like a whole unraveling. Go listen to that episode. So yeah, various examples of operating systems in open source. We have Linux distribution, that's Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, CentOS. Ubuntu is developed by Canonical along with like a large community of contributors. Debian is developed by the Debian Project, a community-driven initiative with like thousands of volunteers, as expected. Fedora is developed by Red Hat and then the Fedora Project community. And then there's CentOS, derived from Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and is a community-driven project too. Then we have FreeBSD. That one is developed by the FreeBSD project. It's also volunteer-driven. Open Solaris, originally developed by Sun Microsystems, that's the people who acquired Oracle a few years ago. And ReactOS, this is by the React Foundation and the community of devs. And then we also have Haiku, that's another open source. Also a volunteer-driven community, like all open source software are. So, I just mentioned 5 examples of open source operating systems. We have different Linux distributions: Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, CentOS, and then we have FreeBSD. That one is not a Linux distribution. And then we have Open Solaris, and we have ReactOS, and we have Haiku. So Haiku, interestingly, is inspired by BeOS, which surprisingly was an operating system that was developed by B Inc. in the mid-1990s. It was apparently developed for personal computers, and it aimed to provide highly responsive and efficient multimedia experience. They were not able to break into the market, but have been responsible for how other operating systems have like also been built, and it actually inspired them. And it's just really interesting to see like the ripple effect of what somebody's project can do. Next part will be figuring out how we want to integrate open source operating systems into our projects. Well, for one, it can be what you build your project on, right? If your software or your project works mostly with a particular open source operating system, it helps drive adoption. If you're going to build your project and you want it to have wide adoption, sometimes you want to build on an open source operating system that is widely accepted. So you can build on Linux, you can build on Mac OS if you want, and it should be adaptable by Mac OS. But it also sort of helps too if you build it on like an open source operating system, because this drives adoption, right? You want to set up the development environment, leverage community resources, customize and contribute to it, customize it to the way that whatever project it is you're building would need. You want to have your members contribute to it once in a while. If it's not like by their time, you could donate money, especially if it's something that you're earning from. Help out with security and maintenance, and like regularly update and maintain your OS to ensure security and stability. This is so important. Follow the best practices for patching and securing systems. It promotes educational initiatives within your community to help members learn about the OS, offer workshops, tutorials, and mentorship programs. So like open source operating systems offer a wealth of benefits. I think the security is probably the best part. Like everybody has access to it and it's easy to see, oh, this has a problem. It's a double-edged sword, right? It also means that somehow people can also have access to write malicious code. But like because it's transparent, it can easily be detected. By integrating like open source operating systems into your project, you leverage their strengths to build robust, flexible, and cost-effective solutions. Also drives adoption for open source operating systems. They are cheaper, and it just sort of works for people who may not be able to afford more expensive operating systems to still be able to use their devices properly. And so like the collaborating nature of open source development fosters continuous improvement and learning, making a very great choice for both individuals and large-scale projects that want to like save on cost and learn and just build really awesome stuff without a lot of restraints. So yeah, this is another episode. Let me know what you think. Share, subscribe, and give me feedback. Until next time, bye.